only patchy progress. The 9th Closing the Gap report shows positive signs in health, including reduced rates of smoking and infant mortality. It also reveals improvements in Indigenous literacy and numeracy. And the Prime Minister is speaking in Parliament at the release of that report. Let's take a listen.
Nothing brought a quiet moment of humanity to the 2016 election campaign more than the handing of the title deeds to Bellew and elder Raylene Singh, 37 years after the Larrakia people submitted a claim to what had always been theirs. For families like Raylene's, despite their old people passing on before the Kenby land claim was settled, the past continues to live in the present. And acknowledging past wrongs enables healing to begin. And we saw that with the national apology to the stolen generations, delivered by Prime Minister Rudd, who also joins us today, and the 9th anniversary of that moment in history was recognised yesterday here in the House. Acknowledgement requires the humility of acceptance of the truth. And on that hot, dry day, on the shores of the Cox Peninsula in Darwin, we acknowledged that the Larrakia people had cared for their country for tens of thousands of years, that their songs had been sung since time out of mind, and that those songs held and passed on the knowledge of Larrakia customs and traditions. Acknowledgement is the seed from which hope and healing grow. It is that acknowledgement that 50 years ago saw the Australian people vote overwhelmingly to change our constitution so that the Commonwealth could assume powers in relation to our first Australians. And while many issues divide us in this place, we are united in our determination to ensure that our constitution is amended once again to recognise our first Australians. Changing the constitution is neither easy nor a task for the faint-hearted. The Referendum Council will conclude its consultations this year so that then Parliament can complete the work of formulating and presenting the recognition amendments. The success of the 1967 referendum also meant that first Australians were counted equally in our official population alongside all others in the census. This provided our first understanding of the survival and the resilience of our Indigenous peoples, but also the depth of that gap between their situation and other Australians. The leaders of those times challenged us to think well past statistics. The Freedom Riders, like Charles Vincent Lingiari, his fellow workers at the Wave Hill Walk-Off, Eddie Mabo and his fight for native title. Mr Speaker, theirs are the shoulders among many upon which a new generation of Indigenous leaders stand today. And last night, the Prime Minister's courtyard was abuzz with enthusiasm, with positivity, and the hope of leaders challenging us to think again past the statistics. Bright, determined women and men stood tall as successful people in their fields of work, proud of their heritage, anchored in their culture. And while we must accelerate progress and close the gap, we must also tell the broader story of Indigenous Australia, not of despondency and deficit, but of a relentless and determined optimism. That being an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australian means to succeed, to achieve, to have big dreams and high hopes, and to draw strength from your identity as an Indigenous person in this country. As Prime Minister, Mr Speaker, I'll
the Prime Minister
continue to
detailing the latest Closing the Gap report, and coverage of that event continues on ABC News.